Good day, spiritual artist. This is CJ Miller, your host. Excited to go through chapter 11 today. It's probably in great synchronicity with how I've been feeling today. So let's talk about first, let's read the chapter while you doodle along and let things come to your mind so that you include them in the doodling. Um, let's start chapter 11, monitoring our thoughts. Quote, the whole idea of mindfulness is all about having a second level monitoring of your thoughts and being able to recognize them as being negative or harmful before they become a part of your being, before they become some kind of action like writing an angry letter to someone or speaking too strongly to someone. Panjay Mishra, end quote. Chapter 11, monitoring our thoughts. When I first started painting, I had no idea that art would lead me to a new world of self-awareness. I decided to paint because I had spent years sitting at a computer and was suffering from lower back pain. I wanted to practice a new skill that didn't require me to sit at a desk. As a new student, I began focusing on the relationship of the brush, the paint, and the canvas. I found myself spending hours before the easel, sometimes experiencing a delightful session, and sometimes walking away in anger and disgust. I began to get curious as to why one painting session was such an incredible experience, while another could be so frustrating that I walked away from my studio. Was I ever going to become an artist? From session to session, I used the same paints, brushes, and materials. Why couldn't I get results? I began to focus on the only thing different from session to session. It felt like it was me. But it wasn't me. It was my thoughts. It was through the painting process that I began to learn to separate myself from my thoughts. I started changing the focus of my attention. Rather than watch my brushstroke, I began watching the thoughts that I was having while holding the paintbrush. I'm going to say that again. Rather than watch my brush stroke, I began watching the thoughts that I was having while holding the paintbrush. I started noticing the variety of thoughts that popped into my head while painting. Sometimes I would think, oh, wow, this brushstroke is so beautiful. I am so talented. And sometimes I would think, Mom was right. I could never be an artist. Thoughts are like that. They take us from affirming statements to malicious attacks in mere seconds. I decided to challenge myself. As a watcher, I noticed that my thoughts affected my work. When thinking good thoughts, I produced excellent work. When thinking critical thoughts, I produced terrible work. With that in mind, I decided to monitor my thoughts and push away those that were negative, critical, or judgmental. If I couldn't move them away, I could walk away, and I did. But I began to build my, quote, thought-watching muscle. With practice, it became easier and easier to avoid negative thoughts while I stood before the easel. While conditioning my thought-watching muscle, I realized that my thinking mind was not me, but a separate entity altogether. My mind was made up of random beliefs and thoughts gathered from many years of living, belief systems from my family, my country, and humanity. Sometimes our thoughts aren't even really our thoughts. They are rooted in our subconscious minds at a very early age. When we're born, our minds soak up these belief systems and assign them as our own. On conscious examination, we may not even realize them to be accurate, but we act on them by habit. By becoming the watcher, we separate our spiritual selves and gain proper perspective. These thoughts affected my painting experience for better and worse, and I never really paid attention to them. Strange thoughts would arise for unexplainable reasons. I never really tracked their source, but I sure noticed them when they arrived. But now I began approaching the canvas with a new goal. Not one to complete a painting, but with the objective of seeing how long I could paint while consciously observing my thoughts. I'm going to repeat that again because it's so key to this. But now I began approaching the canvas with a new goal, not one to complete a painting, but with the objective of seeing how long I could paint while consciously observing my thoughts. When I picked up my brush, I began monitoring the thoughts that popped into my head. I became the gatekeeper of these beliefs. I watched how negative thoughts would create lousy work and positive thoughts would induce me to enter a sort of magical flow. Like most people, My mind flittered back and forth between the two opposites, but gradually my ability to watch my thoughts expanded into larger and larger segments of time. With practice, I would watch my thoughts and notice when they were going in a positive direction or a negative one. If my thoughts grew negative, I couldn't turn them around or halt them. I decided to stop my work. As the gatekeeper of my thoughts, I permitted myself to walk away from the canvas. It's far better to walk away from the creative process than to continue with negative thoughts, because that can only lead to a horrible result. A relatively beautiful start to a painting can be destroyed within moments because of negative thinking. I've had it happen to me on numerous occasions. I pick up the brush, make 2 strokes, realize that my thoughts are harmful, and immediately walk away from the canvas. While I may force myself through artistic challenges, I don't try to force myself through negative thoughts. It's essential to discern the difference. Around the same time, I began listening to thought leaders like Eckhart Tolle on tape. I learned through these spiritual teachers how to be the watcher of my thoughts. Tolle reminds us in his book, The Power of Now, that we are not our thoughts. Our mind is an evolutionary creation with one primary goal: self-protection. As a creation of the evolutionary process, our mind instinctively looks to avoid dangerous experiences. If it suspects that my paintings may lead to failure or criticism, it will begin to sabotage the process with negative thoughts. While painting, I noticed ideas like I can never make money with painting, or I'll never be truly good at this, were stopping me from truly being present during my painting sessions. Today, I continue to challenge myself and exercise this muscle. I experience longer and longer periods of positive thinking or no thought moments. It's in that space of no thought where authentic expression occurs. Working out your thought watching muscle never ends. It's an ongoing process. Even as I write this book, I find myself challenged by negative thoughts. I'd like to say that I've mastered this skill, but I haven't. I still encounter thoughts upon thoughts bombarding me daily. But I've gotten better at standing back and evaluating them. Are they true? Is this a true thought? Byron Katie, another thought leader, has used this question through her process. When we encounter a challenging life situation, she asked us to sit down and consider this question: is this true? For example, is it true that my mother was correct that I could never be an artist? Is it true that I could never be an artist, or does the possibility exist? Is it true that she made this statement, or is this a memory the result of distortion? Upon examination, we often find that our mind has created fictitious memories and thoughts that don't really reflect reality. As the watcher of our thoughts, we are empowered when we question the truth of the belief behind them. While my mother may have worried that being an artist was a very competitive profession, I'm not sure that she ever did say that to me. As we monitor our thoughts, we can no longer blame our partners, parents, or society for our limitations. We must take personal responsibility for ourselves. Practice watching your thoughts and challenging them with Katie's insightful phrase: is it true? Not just while creating, practice conscious awareness of your thoughts throughout the whole day. A spiritual artist realizes that painting, or any act of creation, is an opportunity to practice thought watching, a moment to be truly present with your work. I call this conscious painting. Are you mindful when you work? Try practicing the delicate craft of being the watcher. Learn to separate the real you from the mind you. You are not your thoughts. Watch what your mind is saying to you. Is your mind offering you positive, revitalizing messages, or is it undermining you in a false effort to protect? You may have heard the phrase, thoughts becomes things. It's a spiritual truth. Thoughts do become things, and unmonitored thoughts can become negative things. It's your task to be the gatekeeper of these thoughts. You, the greater you, the you that is connected to creative intelligence, a greater power, all that is. You can co-create to affect the outcome. As I continue to paint, I take my thought practice into the real world. I watch my thoughts throughout the day, always being present to the subliminal messages that my mind puts before me. When I'm driving my car, I monitor my thoughts. When someone cuts me off on the highway, I've learned to watch my thought reaction. At first, I may respond with anger or rage, but then I realize that this is my mind believing that this other driver somehow threatens me, but he or she does not. Her mode of driving is more about her than me. Let her pass, I choose to think. It's through observing and practicing observation that we begin to be the conscious creators of our lives. Wow. This was really appropriate for me to read today, and I find that every day my reading aligns with where I'm at. And I got up this morning and I walked around the house and I fed the dogs. One of the first things I do in the morning, and I look outside and make my coffee, and I realized something. I have so many shoulds going through my mind all day long. Shoulds. And I started listing them. The dog shouldn't have fleas right now. I shouldn't have so many things to fix around the house. I shouldn't feel so tired in the morning. All these shoulds. And then I thought, wait, are you watching your thoughts? Are you watching what you're letting ride up in front of you? And the interesting thing is, these thoughts, I don't consciously think them. Let me say that again. I don't consciously think them. They were just there. And they're put there because of the way we were raised, the things we were taught. And I think that we have this, especially here in the West, we have this idea that life is supposed to be just fun and easygoing. Everything is perfect. And things that are created last forever. These are not true thoughts. So if we use Byron Katie, is it true? Is it true that my dog shouldn't have fleas? Not really. Unfortunately, not really. Because it's a dog and they live outside and inside and they bring in fleas. Is it true that I shouldn't have to repair things around the house? No, not really, because everything in life has a cycle of birth, growth, and then passing away and transforming into the next spiritual expression. So when I sat back and I thought about this, I thought, when I say should this, should that, I'm really operating, I think, in the past, because these are past expectations. I'm operating from a mindset that thinks that things should be a certain way by what I was told. And of course, the spiritual artist is always in the present, in the moment. Just, oh, look at that. The dog has a flea. Oh, I have to paint that awning on my deck. Oh, these things are there. But when we set in and put judgment in, and we'll talk about that later, it starts changing us from being present to in the past or the future. So this is really important, and I encourage you to start watching your thoughts all the time. And this is an unending practice, by the way. I'd love to tell you that you're going to do this today, and you're done, but you're not. Because we have so many thought systems in us, so many shoulds. I should do this, I should do that. What should are you feeling today? Write it in the comments section of this video. What should are you feeling? And how can you ask yourself, is it true? Is this true that I should do this? Or I should be this way? Or I should always feel energized? No, it's not. It's not a spiritual truth. So I sat down and thought about that today, and I went through my list and I asked myself, is this true? So I encourage you to continue on. I'm so glad you're going with me on this journey. And it's funny, I could read this book over and over again, and every time it reminds me of something that I've forgotten. I'll say lightly that I've forgotten, and I let myself slide back into some bad habits. So enjoy your day as a spiritual artist, and be aware that you are not your thoughts, but you're the watcher of your thoughts. I'll see you tomorrow. And thanks for joining me on the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Make sure to follow my channel on YouTube so you get updated every day about the new release. Talk to you soon.
Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.